Coming to you direct from Silencer Shop Studios, home of the Glass Case of Emotion.
SilencerShop.com, the easiest way to buy silencers online, period.
Stand by for education, enlightenment, enjoyment, and entertainment.
He's not here to talk about your feelings. He's not here to say what you want to hear. He's here to say what needs to be said.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, please welcome your host, the pimp hand of America, Professor Paul Markle.
All right, kids. It's time. What time is it? Army strong? Army wrong? That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But today, I'm going to refer to my show notes that say that today is episode number 555. Situational awareness and the OODA loop. Yes, indeed. What does that all mean? I don't know. OODA loop. You're throwing out all kinds of craziness at me here, and I don't get it. Boyd's loop, OODA loop. Don't worry. We'll help you get through it. We really will. Welcome back to Student of the Gun Radio. I truly appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. So I guess it makes it our time, does it not, Jared?
It indeed
Say hello to the folks at home.
Hello to the folks at home. You know what's funny?
What's funny?
It's that I set up a thing, so I'm notified when somebody books an appointment to talk, to like jump on a phone call. Mm-hmm. And so what I send them after they book an appointment or reserve a time is, if you're there and I'm there, doesn't that make it our time? That's right. And I've gotten several comments that they appreciate that subject line.
Mr. Hand.
Yes.
Mr. Hand, that's right. If you don't get the Mr. Hand joke, well, you need to get out more or get in more or do something. I don't know what to tell you. I can't live your life for you. I can't walk around like doing things for you. Sometimes
can you jump around?
You're going to have to do things for yourself.
Jump up.
I'm sorry.
Jump up, get down.
And get down. Y'all going to make me lose my mind. Oh, man. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the OODA loop, Boyd's loop. Now, last Friday, we talked about Jeff Cooper's color code. And the color code that Cooper, there's been not a whole lot of discussion about it, but Cooper's color code and Boyd's OODA loop are very similar in the thought process. They're very similar. The OODA loop actually goes a little bit farther. Actually, the color code is part of the beginning of the OODA loop. We're going to talk about that today. In addition to that, we're going to talk about, we got some upside-down cop thinking from Buffalo PD, and you guys you'll appreciate this. And we've got a quiet time for you today, a book. I'm reading a new book, another book, and I wanted to take some time and talk about it with you guys, the audience, because, well, I've been out of high school for 3 decades now, and Ronald Reagan was president while I was in high school. Ronald Reagan was the president when I became a United States Marine, and he was my first commander-in-chief. But unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, because of the world where the media, Hollywood and the press are basically they're two sides of the same coin. They're two sides of the same liberal propaganda coin. And if you're less than 40, you really don't remember Reagan. You don't remember what it was like when Reagan was president. And if you're less than 40, you sure don't remember what the country was like under the insane liberalism of Jimmy Carter, under Jimmy Carter's Democrat administration, and how terrible it was and how depressing it was. And all you know is the revisionist history that has been spoon-fed to you by the popular media culture, by Hollywood. And Hollywood leftists don't like Ronald Reagan. And CNN and your leftists, your socialists, they don't like Ronald Reagan. So they're going to spin the history of the Reagan era as greed and national debt and blah, 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 blah. Because they're not basing that on fact, and they don't ever consider what Carter did and how Carter almost destroyed the United States of America. We were on a fast track to being a third world country in the late 1970s. They don't ever consider that because Carter had good intentions. And remember, when you're a psychotic liberal lunatic, liberalism is a mental disease. When you're a liberal, intentions, not actions, not results, but intentions are what make you a good person or a bad person. It doesn't matter whether your intentions actually ever show fruit or whether you actually ever accomplish anything. It's how do you feel? What do you say? It's childish. It's the politics of kindergarten, I guess you could say. It's elementary school childish politics. We're going to talk about that later on. But for right now, let's go ahead and let me sip some water here so that I can talk about this. Jared, is there anything we need to discuss before I get into the main topic of the day?
Well, I do want to discuss that if you guys would like to receive live notifications for when Student of the Gun goes live, and that could be on Facebook, it could be on Instagram, it could be on some new cool stuff that we might have coming out later, I don't know. And then you can do that. Yeah.
What kind of stuff?
A new cool stuff that
cool. I thought that was one word. I thought it was like nucle.
Yeah, nucle.
I was like Nukal or
nucle.
I don't know.
It's like nuclear.
Nuclear?
Nuclear.
Any nuclear stuff we have coming
Yes.
out. Okay.
So anyway, if you want to do that, just go to studentofthegun.com and you can click on the live notifications button and do that.
That is what you should do. All right, let's go ahead and go back to Colonel John Boyd and Boyd's OODA loop. I'm thinking in the early 2000s, I was made aware of the OODA loop, OODA, or Boyd's loop. And what the OODA loop is, actually, Boyd's whole entire process of thinking when it came to dynamic warfare and so forth it's kind of doctoral level thinking. I believe Boyd gave his briefing, his U.S. Air Force briefing about maneuver warfare, which included the understanding of OODA loop and so on and so forth. I believe it was a 4-hour briefing. Now, OODA is just a small part of the overall strategy and policy and understanding of dynamic warfare that John Boyd put together. You need to read Boyd's book. And we recommended it already on the show, and I'm not going to rehash it. But let's talk about OODA. And the reason I knew I had to talk about situational awareness and OODA was because, as I mentioned last Friday, we've gotten several letters or Facebook messages, emails, and so on and so forth from people who listen to the show and have either been involved in attacks or assaults themselves or have had friends or family members who were attacked or assaulted. And they told us about the story, and most of them just wanted to relate the story to us. Some of them asked us for information or advice, I guess you could say, not information, but what should I do? And most of it comes back to situational awareness, but not just situational awareness. So let's go ahead and dive into OODA, or OODA. Now, the first O is observe, right? How do we observe? We use our senses. Now, you're probably not going around touching and tasting things, right? We got 5 senses. Part of your situational awareness generally doesn't include tasting and touching. I mean, you could. I don't know where you're living and what you're doing, but the number one sense, obviously, is sight. And human beings take in somewhere from 85 to 90% of all their sensory input through their eyes. So you need to have your eyes up, and you have to be paying attention. Now, part of the observation, and we've talked about this, I talked about it in the Bodyguard books. I broke it down really super simple in the Team Honey Badger book. How do you teach your kids to be trained observers? We come up with little games, right? Games that you can play with your kids so that you teach them to be trained observers without teaching them to be paranoid or, you're like, there are bad people everywhere, Johnny, and you got to watch out for them. And all that does is it makes your kids scared. But if you train your kids to be observers, to pay attention to the surroundings, to get their heads up out of their iPhones and iPads and actually look around, what they'll do is they'll develop that habit, and then what will happen is they'll find themselves out in public paying attention just as a matter of habit. It's not a deliberate act. It's a subconscious act that they just do. Wow. Think about it like that. Yeah, think about it like that. So the O in OODA is observe. You have to be paying attention to what's going on around you. And when it comes back to Cooper's color code, you could say, well, that is, that would be the yellow. The heads up, paying attention in public. Now, the next one is Orient. Now, this is where the Cooper color code kind of blends. Observe, orient. Now, observation means I'm paying attention, 360, the whole world around me, and I see something that needs my attention, that requires my attention. That is when I will orient toward that thing. Now, when you're a fighter pilot, you're up in the sky and you're flying around, you're looking, monitoring your radar, looking through your bubble, and you're observing, and then something pops up. You either get the radar blip or you see an enemy aircraft, you see it in the sky. Now, you have something to orient towards. Now, in the color code, you have orange and red. And the orange means a detailed awareness. You're yellow and you're walking around, then orange, like, oh, something may be going on over there. I need to pay attention to that area. And then it goes from that area to that very specific thing, which is red, right? Well, in the OODA loop, you've got observe, paying attention. You've got orient. You're walking around and you orient on something. Now, let's say the very, very common situation, parking lots, public structures. You're out in public and you're going about your business, and you know what is commonplace. Do you not? Do you know how people normally interact with each other? You say, well, yes, Paul, of course I know how civilized humans normally interact with each other. Okay. Well, you know what is common, if you know what is commonplace and what should be happening. When something happens or transpires or an action occurs that is outside of the norm, that is abnormal. Remember, we've given it's one of my favorite examples, the movie The Bodyguard, the very intro of The Bodyguard. And he says, how did you know? And he said, I saw him washing cars. And he goes, so did I. And he said, they don't wash cars on the parking deck. And that's really simple. Is in that situation, Kevin Costner is the bodyguard. He knew that you're not supposed to wash cars on the parking deck, so that was out of the order. That was abnormal, and he needed to focus on that. And then, of course, the guy pulls out a gun, and Costner kills him, and you go from there. So observe, orient. I'm walking to my car, and I'm paying attention, and I see someone coming out of the corner of my eye, right corner, left corner, whatever. It's another humanoid, and they're coming towards me. They're coming toward my car. Okay, well, this is my car. I know that this is my car. I know that the car that I'm approaching is not that person's car. So why are they walking towards me? I don't know yet, but I have to orient my attention toward that person, right? Right. So I do that. I orient my attention toward that person. Now, what do I do? Depending on my training and upbringing, I may throw up my left hand and say, hang on a second, hold it right there. I might give him the universal stop sign. Now, if I give him the universal stop sign, throw up my left hand, put my right hand back, as if to say, Shazam, look what has appeared, and they keep coming, then I have to decide and act really quickly. Because what did I just discover? If you throw up the universal stop sign, someone's walking towards you, you throw up the universal stop sign, you put your left hand up or right hand or whatever, and you give them the stop, right? You show them the palm of your hand. And they don't. They keep coming. What do you know immediately? This is not a normal situation, right? Because every other person on planet Earth, whether they can hear or speak English, if you throw up the universal stop sign, they'll stop. No, they're like, oh, no, I just wanted to ask you what time it was or how to get to Main Street or whatever. If they ignore that, then you know immediately, without them even saying a word, that they have abnormal or hostile intentions. So then you get to the D. You have to decide what you're going to do, and you need to do it immediately. Not in an hour, not in 15 minutes. It needs to be done now. I observed, I oriented, now I have to decide and I have to act. So the decision is, I'm going to what? I don't know. What is the situation? I'm gonna whip out my Roscoe, man. I'm gonna skin it, put it in my hand, and yell, stop! And if they don't stop after that, it just got really bad and ugly. You say, whoa, hang on a second, Paul. You got to scan their waistband. You have to look in their hands. You have to dialogue with them, ask them how they're feeling today, what their intentions are, yada, yada, yada. I say to you, oh, really? That's interesting. Now tell me something. Let's say that you, in your world, decided out of the blue to go ask a stranger who was walking to their car how to get to Main Street. So you approach them unspoken, without saying, excuse me, sir. What do normal people say, Jared? If you're going to approach someone uninvited, how do normal human beings, how do they broach that?
They say, excuse me.
Exactly. They say, pardon me, excuse me, hello, can I ask you a question? Do you just closed mouth stalk in on somebody? No, you don't. Why? Because you're not a mongoloid. If there's a human being coming straight towards you, they have not greeted you. They've not said, pardon me, excuse me, can I ask you a question? You throw up the universal stop sign. They ignore it, keep coming, still having spoken, not spoken. Then you pull out a gun in your hand, yell stop, and they keep coming? What would you do, let's say, if you said, excuse me, sir, you thought they heard you, but they actually didn't. They turn, look at you, eyes wide, they throw up their left hand to tell you to stop. Would you keep coming? Would you, as a normal human being, would you just, F your hand, I'm coming in to ask you where Main Street is? No, you wouldn't, because you're not a mongoloid. You're not a psychopath. But let's just say you did. Let's say things get all screwy and haywire, and then the person backpedaled, threw their left hand out, and then all of a sudden, a pistol appeared in their right hand. Would you keep going into that person? And you're saying, no, I wouldn't. I would haul butt. I would duck. I would throw my hands up and say, whoa, 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 dude. I just wanted to ask you where, you would not keep going, would you? No, you wouldn't. No reasonable, rational human being would. So the whole, you can't press that trigger until you've, no. The whole process, the 3 questions you have to ask yourself, the intent, remember that whole intent thing? What is the demonstration? They never said a word. There's no demonstrated intent there. I would like to differ. They approached you unspoken. You told them to stop. They didn't stop. You pulled your gun out. It was in your hand. They kept coming to grab you. That person's going to kill you. That you need to stop that person, because if you allow them to put hands on you, they're going to do physical harm to you. You need to understand that. And in OODA, all of that takes place immediately.
Right now.
Now.
Yep.
And what happens, and we've had, like I said, several different emails and Facebook messages and so forth where people told us, this was my assault, or this is what happened to a relative or friend. Often it's they were attacked, assaulted, hit, struck before they realized that the threat was even there. They were looking at their phone. They were fishing in their pockets for their keys. They were doing things that prevented them from seeing the attacker approach. And their first indication that they were being attacked was when they were being attacked. Not, hey, I see a guy over there and he's acting weird. It was, Boop, boop, boop. I'm walking in my car. Bam. I'm blindsided. Hit in the head. Or next thing I know, someone's grabbing me, pulling me, putting their hands on me. That's bad juju. Okay. But then there were other situations where the person said that they realized, they observed, they saw the person come in towards them, the attacker. They saw them coming towards them. But before they knew it, the attacker had grabbed them, pushed them, knocked them down, put them in a chokehold, whatever. And that's not a failure of the O and the O. That's not a failure of the observe and orient. That's a failure of the D and the A. It's not enough just to observe. It is not enough just to observe and orient. You have to decide and act. And you have to do it immediately. And that is where, unfortunately, most people fail the test. They say, okay, I listen to what you said, Paul. I keep my head up. I pay attention. I see what's going on around me. Then the bad person appears, makes their move, and the victim goes into vapor lock. They go into mental vapor lock, and they freeze. They don't decide. They don't act. And ladies and gentlemen, how can you learn to do all these things? How can you learn to make the OODA loop work for you? I'm going to say something that's probably going to bunge a lot of you up. You're not going to want to hear this. You have to take training. Yes, I know you're like, oh, I knew it. I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. This guy wants me to do something. He wants me to spend money and to take time. And I don't want to do it. I just want to buy a pill. I want to buy a vitamin. I want to buy the Super Mega 2000 magic pill, and I want to take it, and I want to be a death-dealing tactical ninja without having to invest any time or money. I invested the money in the pill, right? That's America today. America, every 2 months there's a super Hollywood diet thing. And you're like, hey, Paul, you're a SWAT fuel guy. Yeah, you know what I do with SWAT fuel? I work out, I train, I exercise. I don't take it and go sit in a chair. And that's what some people, we've had a few people who said, well, I bought that SWAT fuel and I don't think it helped me at all. And I said, well, what did you do? What was your exercise or training routine after you took it? Well, I didn't. Oh, okay. So the SWAT fuel didn't make you lose any weight or get any stronger because you thought you could take it and go sit on a couch, watch TV? If your plan is to sit on a couch and watch TV, you don't need SWAT fuel or multivitamin or anything. Just sit there and watch TV, man. That's the same mentality people have with training for, the gravest extreme, as Mossad Ayub likes to say. They're like, the only way that when you go to the cupboard, man, the OODA, you observe and you orient, and you're like, great, I did it. And now you have to decide and act. And if there's nothing there, if you've never practiced, if you've never gotten training, if you've never, you're going to go to the cupboard and it's going to be empty. And that's not the time to just start making stuff up. I mean, you can, but really the only way to make it all work, Boyd didn't just theorize the OODA loop. He didn't just go to a chalkboard and, because they had chalk back then. He didn't just go to the blackboard and write a bunch of stuff and say, this is what you do. No, Boyd got into a jet aircraft and he dogfought. He engaged in dogfights, whatever you want to say, with the best aviators on planet Earth, in the free world at least. They didn't go against he did it for real. Like, he got up there and he put it into practice. And he was never defeated. Nobody. American pilots, Navy pilots, Marine Corps pilots, and, NATO pilots. They all wanted to beat this Boyd guy. Who's this guy who thinks he's so cool? I can beat him. No one ever did. No one ever defeated John Boyd in a dogfight. And he retired from flying, never having been defeated in a dogfight. People didn't believe it was true, but it was. And and people said, how could that be? How were you able to do that? He said, well, because of this. Because of the Boyd's loop, because of the OODA loop, because of getting up there and making it happen. And if you want the OODA loop to work for you, if you want to be able to use it for real, in the gravest extreme, I'm telling you, you're going to have to devote the time, the energy, and the money to go to training and then practice. So then if you ever have to do it, then it'll be there. It'll be there for you. So. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's thank our friends at Brownells. The reason we want to thank them is because, number one, the following people make it so that I can speak into this black carbon steel microphone to you 4 times a week and then again on Friday. So Brownells.com. On Friday, I held up the AR pistol project for you guys, and the vast majority of the parts did come from the Brownells catalog. So if you're into that kind of a thing, if you're digging it, you can go to the Brownells catalog too, and you can avail yourself to all the goodness that is Brownells. Century Arms is the sweetest smelling arms maker in the U.S. of A. And I did get a chance to go out. I took the RAS-47 rifle, the stamped receiver AK, took it out to the Mississippi Combat Training Academy range, and I put about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I put about 8 banana clips through it. And I can tell you this is what I did. I put the red dot mount on it. And we've spoken about this, about how the red dot mount, it requires an Aimpoint T1 or H1, either one of those, footprint, right? And the Hollow Sun red dot from Brownells, they've got them in their catalog right now. It's a 1-to-1 red dot sight, and they're priced less than $200. I put that on there. I installed it. I rough zeroed it, but I put it on the gun, took it out to the range, and the first thing I did was I BZO'd the gun. I put it down on a bench. I made my adjustments, and this actually was kind of cool. With the Hollow Sun, it has a little slot that you use to adjust the elevation and windage, but the covers actually have a little, like a mini blade, screwdriver kind of blade. So you just use, kind of like a T1, or an H1, you use the caps to make the adjustments. So it's super simple, super easy. You don't need to take any. I was able to make one adjustment. I BZO'd it. I fired 3 rounds. I saw where the rounds were. I went, to the left and up. And my second I fired 4 rounds to verify. My second 4 rounds were in the 10 ring, and they were all very close to each other. And I was like, okay, good to go. So once it was zeroed, I started running some drills. I went over to the rifle range where they had steel out at 200, and as long as I did my job and pressed the trigger and held the gun still, from the bench it was easy. From the bench I was able to hit the steel target, bing, bing, bing every time. And then I decided that to take a little walk, and so I started at 200, and I progressed all the way down to about 50, and I fired from the kneeling, I fired from a hasty behind a barricade, and from standing, and so on and so forth. Got the gun hot, and I put about, I guess, after I zeroed it, I put about 6 magazines worth, so about 6 times 30, 180 rounds or so through it. And I shot it so much that I could feel the heat through the forend in my gloved hand. That's how hot it was. And I walked over and I sat down and I got a fresh piece of paper, and with the barrel really hot, I shot it again. I checked the zero, and it was about an inch high from where I had initially zeroed it. And you're like, oh, that... But the rounds were all really close together, right on top of each other. And there was no deviation windage-wise, but it was about an inch high. And so you guys are like, oh, that proves it. It doesn't hold zero. Like, you guys know the thing about cold bore shots and how steel expands and changes as it gets hotter and flexes and stuff like that. I would have called that pretty good. But all in all, first time out of the box, probably a couple of hundred, like I said, like about 8 magazines worth of the Red Army standard ammunition. And so we're basically just getting it broke in. I put some frog lube on the bolt and on the rails. And once I frog lubed it, I reassembled it, started shooting it, ran like a champ. No problems. And let me tell you what, when you buy those guns, Jared, the full-size AKs, especially the C-39, you know what they want you to be?
What?
Those guns want you to be strong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because when you take one and then you like shoot it and walk with it and carry it and shoot it from offhand and stuff, those guns want you to be strong, so that's a good thing. You can check out that and all Century Arms products at centuryarms.com, or you can order. Last time I checked the Brownells catalog or the website, they had Century RAS 47s in stock. So there's that. Just throwing that out there for you. Duracoat, because life is too short to have an ugly gun. End of story. That's it. Oh, and real quick, I would like to give a belated happy birthday to Aaron Iverson, little Aaron Iverson. His birthday already transpired, but hey, Aaron, happy birthday anyway. Where can you get Duracoat products, Sharon? Can you get them anywhere?
You can get them pretty much anywhere. You can get them at Walmart. You can get them at Brownells. You can get them at Midway. You can get them at LauerWeaponry.com. Maybe we should put them on Student of the Gun.
Well, here's what I can tell you. You can't get them at Walmart stores. Don't get people too excited.
Walmart.com. Didn't I say that?
Walmart. No, you said Walmart.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you're just supposed to read my mind.
You're supposed to read my mind. But you can get Duracoat products pretty much anywhere. You can get them from Brownells or from Lauer Weaponry or what have you. And I know it's no longer February, but you still can avail yourself to the slightly darker black. Yeah. Duracoat, why? Because life's too short to have an ugly gun. SWAT Fuel, as we talked about yesterday, has a store called SWATfuelstore.com. And if you'd like to save some money on your nutritional type products, your
you
supplements.
You can save some nipples and dimes or nickels and boobs.
Yeah, something like that. Money. Use the promo code when you check out, SOTG2015. You want to be doing that because you want to save yourself some money. And in addition to that, if you're a grad program member, you get a special grad program bonus discount that essentially the money you save on your SWAT fuel pays for your grad program. So it's a wash. It's a win-win, baby. Yes, I did frog lube the AK, the Century gun. I did it. I started out with a clean, dry bolt and bolt carrier. Then I applied the frog lube extreme to them, and I shot, and kept on going. So far, so good. If you'd like frog lube, you can get it from Brownells. It is a bio-based, non-petroleum firearms lubricant. And lastly, but not leastly, what are you wearing right now? What's on your hip, Paul? Well, what's on my hip is a TP9SF Elite, the compact model, and it is riding very, very snugly and securely in a Super Tuck Deluxe holster, which came from Crossbreed holsters. And yes, they do indeed make the TP9 SF, SA, all the TP9 series. You can get holsters for those, and you can wear them on your body every day.
Attention, new listeners. We produced a free training video series called 7 Training Tips That Could Save Your Life. We want you to have access to this life-saving information. Get instant access now at studentofthegun.com. Do you watch Student of the Gun TV, read the blog, and follow us on Facebook? If you answered no to any of those questions, you are wrong, but you can easily fix yourself. Go to studentofthegun.com to find everything SOTG.
All right. Thank you, Alex, for reminding everyone what they need to do. This next story is kind of, it's gun-related, and it's police-related, and it's, this comes to us from a website called LEO, that's L-E-O, affairs.com, Law Enforcement Officer Affairs, the voice of law enforcement online. That's how they advertise themselves. And now this story, I'm going to read the headline to you, and I don't want you to take that as my personal endorsement of the product, but I'm going to see what they have to say. It says, poor decision leads Buffalo PD to issue substandard pistol caliber carbine instead of an AR-15. Okay. let's go ahead and dive in. Now, it just says featured news from Leo Affairs. It doesn't have an author's name, but I'll read it to you like this. Police in Buffalo, New York are seething. Are they really seething? Or, I don't know. Well, after department issued them a subpar 40 caliber carbine of mediocre quality. Now, come on now. Over AR-15s, their union requested. Okay, so what happened is the cop union came in and said, hey, we want our guys to have patrol rifles. How come they don't have them? And Buffalo PD's admin said, all right, calm down there, psycho Tackleberry. We'll give you a long gun. In light of aging equipment and the threat of active shooter and terrorist attacks, the Buffalo Police Department planned to buy 115 rifles to be assigned to specific vehicles, such as those belonging to supervisors. In addition, 450 plate carriers, described as active shooter vests, will be added as well, one per patrol car. Okay. Despite the urgings of the Police Benevolent Association chapter to upgrade each Buffalo officer with an AR-15 rifle chambered in 5.56, the police commissioner, Daniel Durenda, reportedly questioned the need for every officer to have what he called a high-powered rifle while on routine patrol, questioning the rifle's suitability for urban areas. In response, Durenda agreed to purchase a lot of just right carbines that take the Glock magazine. Okay, here's the deal. There's a lot of companies out there making pistol caliber carbines, right? They look like AR-15s, they look like black rifles, but they take pistol magazines, or they take pistol calibers. Is there anything wrong with these guns? No, not necessarily. But the thing is, if you could have a 5.56, but instead you go for a pistol caliber, you need to ask yourself why. And you need to equip yourself with fact, not bullcrap. And the problem here is that the police commissioner is referring to 5.56 guns, ARs, as high-powered rifles, and he questioned their suitability for urban areas. And what does that mean? What does that translate to you and I? That translates to the over-penetration boogeyman. Jared, how many times have we run into people like, oh, I never have one of those. I never have a 223 for home defense. You're better, because that's, remember the overkill guy? Because that's overkill.
Yeah.
That's why I have an AR chambered in 40 cal. Hey, Brosif, I hate to break your ballistic heart here, but you're far more likely to get a through and through penetration on a human with a 40 Smith & Wesson round than you are a 5.56. Well, that can't possibly be. Yeah, it is. 20 years or so of using 40 Smith & Wesson bullets has found that the vast majority of them, when cops shoot bad guys with their 40 pistols, most of the time their bullets go all the way through the bad guys and come out the other side, most of the time. And if they're the slow, heavy bullets, the vast majority that's like the 180s, they don't open up. They just come out the same 40 caliber size that they went in as. Now, the lighter, faster bullets, some of those do actually expand, but they still can't go that fast because it's a high-pressure cartridge, which does what? What does a high-pressure cartridge do? Well, high-pressure cartridges ruin and destroy pistols. But anyway, this is the whole reason I brought this up is because this is what happens when you let non-gun people decide. So we got the main two things that I've got here to point out is how the chief or the commissioner or whatever is afraid of the 5.56 because it's a high-powered cartridge and we don't need that in the city. Okay, whatever. And then the other one is they're only going to, even after they buy these 40 caliber carbines, they're only going into the cars of supervisors. So the guy who's actually going to be the first one on the scene, the patrolman, because that's who gets there first, those guys aren't going to have them. So if they want the super cool 40 carbine to come into play, they have to wait. Okay. Now, in defense of the carbine, I'm going to say this. Is it better to have two hands on the gun, a stock, and a longer sight radius? Abso-freaking-lutely is. It is. It just is. Okay. From a shooting standpoint, from a platform standpoint, when you're holding a handgun, you'll have 2 points of contact, right? Right hand, left hand, right hand. That's your total points of contact to stabilize that bullet launching device. If you have a rifle or a carbine, now you have 4 points of contact. Shoulder, cheek, right hand, left hand. You're more likely to get a good solid hit on target with a carbine than you are with a pistol. So in that case, yes, it is better to have a carbine or a rifle than it is to have a pistol. Granted. And I mean, I've felt that way for a long time. That's not rocket science, and that's not, breaking news. It's not anything, special. So when it comes to practicality, yes, it's better to put your hands on a rifle-style gun than a pistol if you really need to fight somebody. And now 40 is not exactly the cheapest ammunition in the world. 9mm is way more economical than .223, so 9mm carbines are great ways to train inexpensively, yes, and there are places for them. For instance, if you're shooting subsonic 9 and you have a carbine, you put a can on it, you can shoot very, very quietly, which is another bonus. But apples for apples, dollars for dollars, there's really no reason not to have a 5.56 carbine if you can afford it and if they're available to you. And I think that if you're a police agency, that you probably can afford them, and they probably will be available to you. It's not like they couldn't find one. They're like, I don't know where to buy these evil black rifles. Where can we get those? I just thought that was interesting, that even today we still have this upside-down thinking when it comes to pistols versus rifles versus carbines and so forth. But given that, it's Tuesday, and it's time for some quiet time.
Meet Sid. Sid doesn't text back. Sid does simplify suppressor ownership. Meet Sid, the new interactive kiosk that makes the fingerprinting and paperwork of silencer applications quick, easy, and pain-free. If you're ready to own a silencer, make time to meet Sid, your new buddy in the silencer business. Available at selected Powered by Silencer shop retailers.
Okay, guys, one of the things that we like to do during quiet time, brought to you by Silencer Shop, is talk about reading, talk about software, talk about educating your brain. It's not enough to buy guns and ammo. You have to have a sharp, educated mind. And the book I'm going to recommend to you today is called Ronald Reagan, How an Ordinary Man Became an Extraordinary Leader by Dinesh D'Souza. There are a lot of biographies about Ronald Reagan, and the reason I chose this one was because, number one, I recognize Dinesh D'Souza as a conservative writer. I've read his stuff before. I've read his articles and what have you, and he was there during the Reagan administration. He was young. He was a very young conservative during the Reagan administration. But he gives, and he even admits in his book that when he first worked in D.C., worked under the Reagan administration, that he wished that Reagan would have done things differently, that he would have done more, that he'd been more energetic and more excited and he just didn't get it. And a lot of the people around him didn't get it. You know why they didn't? Because they were young and brash and full of, P and V or whatever. They're full of testosterone. And they didn't understand the wisdom of the simplicity. Jared, you know what Reagan once said? He said, "It's not easy, but it's simple." Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Reagan was talking about tax cuts. He was talking about defeating the Soviet Union. He was talking, one of Reagan's favorite things was would say, well, no, it may not, it is simple. It's not easy. Because everyone in D.C., especially in the 70s, they were dealing with in what they called stagflation. The economy was stagnant and inflation was growing. Unemployment was growing. They had what they referred to as a misery index. The misery index was inflation combined with unemployment. People were depressed in the 1970s. And Reagan came along. He said, we're going to fix it. And they're like, oh, how can you fix it? You're a dunderhead. You're a dunce. And one thing that I wanted to point out, as you read this book, I'm about halfway through it. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm about halfway through it. And when you read it, you're going to be struck, I think you will be struck, by the similarities to the Reagan 1980 victory and the Trump victory. Jared, you remember when the election was getting close this year or last year, whatever, and we reminded people, Yeager did, we did, other people, I know Limbaugh did, that don't get depressed. In the 1980 election, they had Carter and Reagan neck and neck. And at one point, they actually had Carter, like 2 weeks before the election, the intelligentsia predicted that Carter would beat Reagan. They're like, he's got it. This Reagan guy is a nobody and so forth. But then in the book, D'Souza, and this book was written way before the Trump administration. He wrote this during the Clinton administration. He wrote that, but in the silence of the ballot box, the people made their decision. And historically, as you should know, Ronald Reagan destroyed Jimmy Carter. It wasn't even close. He annihilated Jimmy Carter. But the intelligentsia at the time never saw it coming. They couldn't believe it. And what's funny to me, and this I was reminded of this reading the book, is how in the 80s, the left-wing Democrat liberal socialists, you know what their main attack on Ronald Reagan was, Jared? What their default attack was?
What?
That he was an actor. That he had been an actor. And that he was not a professional politician. And because he had been an actor...
Sounds familiar.
His opinions didn't matter. And we shouldn't listen to him. Now, isn't that weird how today the exact same people who said Reagan was a dunderhead, he was a dunce, he was an amateur, he shouldn't be listened to, we can't take him seriously, all he is an actor. Those exact same people today hold actors up as the geniuses of our age. And you say, Paul, well, do you think... No. It's you think Reagan was a good president, but you don't think we should listen to Hollywood? No, what I'm saying is this. Where did they change? They went from Reagan is a dunderhead and he's an amateur and we shouldn't listen to him because all he is an actor. And today, those exact same people are telling us that we need to take the thoughts and opinions of actors as gospel. Hey, left wing, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. If you are a listener of Student of the Gun, and I'm guessing that you are because my words just entered your ear canal, I would highly suggest, especially if you did not live through the 1980s, but even if you did, like I did, it's good to have a refresher. I mean, I was in junior high when Reagan got elected, and he was my president all through high school. Then he was my president when I became a Marine. So I remember that time in America, although it's been many years, obviously. If you're younger than me, if you're 40 or under, you don't remember. You know what people have told you, but you don't really remember. So I think that you owe it to yourself to pick up the book. It's called Ronald Reagan, How an Ordinary Man Became an Extraordinary Leader by Dinesh D'Souza. And if you go to the show notes, episode 555, Jared put the link in there for you, and you can buy it directly from Amazon, just like that. All right, kids, that's it. That's it for Tuesday's episode of Student of the Gun Radio. Thank you for joining us today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Army Strong or Army Wrong. That should be interesting. And it's going to be episode 556. So load up your black rifles and listen to Student of the Gun tomorrow. Until then, remember, you're a beginner once, a student for life.